Hello, welcome to another Ask Wrexham podcast. The hashtag Ask Wrexham on Blue Sky and Twitter has been brilliant, allowing people to interact with us during matches and also raise other issues, and has become a fantastic Wrexham supporting community too. So I'm delighted to be bringing back the Ask Wrexham podcast. I am Mark Griffiths, and I would say that the Ask Wrexham podcast is fantastic because I invented it. There, my modesty has been drained. Let's have a squiz at our first question. Now then, the big question. Craig in Vancouver asking about this Welsh League Cup proposal that can put us back into Europe. So, interesting one. Let's go over it. I mean, for a start, importantly, Wrexham has got a fantastic pedigree of playing in Europe, from qualifying through the Welsh Cup. We got as far as the quarterfinals of the European Cup Winners' Cup, which is a tournament which was played until the early 90s. The trouble is, when the Welsh League formed in the mid-90s, it was a fork in the road essentially, and we had to decide, and it was a choice of going into the Welsh League, which was not viable. Have a look at the attendance figures in the Welsh League and you'll understand that, or staying in the English system. And if we did that, we had to forego European qualification. Why are we in the English system in the first place? Well, we were formed in 1864. We predate the Welsh League by quite a long way. And so, some people try to create about the Welsh teams being in the English system. Well, what else were we supposed to do? Just not play football until the Welsh League got invented? It's daft. We played a major part, as did Swansea and Cardiff. Cardiff won the FA Cup in 1927 in the formation of football in Britain and therefore the world. It's all a bit petty, I think, when people are trying to complain about the fact that we're in the Football League now when we've been in that setup essentially all along. Anyway, enough of that. This idea now is essentially partly in order to boost the Welsh League, because the number of places you get in European competition and the point at which your teams enter are determined by coefficients. Each country has a coefficient based on the performance of the clubs from that country. The Welsh League teams, well, TNS has made history this season by getting into the group stages of the UEFA Conference League. But basically, they're the first team ever to have done that from the League of Wales system. So if they have another representative, Wrexham, Cardiff, Swansea, Newport, and we do better than the other League of Wales teams have done, well, that's a big, but not the other, the League of Wales teams have done, that will boost their coefficient ratings, will hopefully allow more Welsh League teams to get into Europe. There'll be a boost in prize money as well. So those are all the benefits that make the League of Wales favour it. As I understand it, the EFL, even though some clubs have raised concerns, don't directly have a voice on this. It's down to whether the English FA is willing to sanction this. Of course, the EFL indirectly has a voice in terms of representation with the FA and also representations they could make to the FA. So, well, we'll have to see what comes of that. If it happens, we'll be put into a reorganised Nathaniel MG League Cup, which is the League Cup for Welsh League teams. There would be the 12 top division teams plus the 4 English EFL teams, and we would basically play a knockout. So in terms of that, that wouldn't have a huge impact on us, really. There would be 4 matches maximum added to our schedule, and although the Welsh FA have talked about ensuring we field strong teams, they talked also about it being in line with the EFL trophy. Now, as we've seen, we pick second 11s for the EFL trophy, which you would think would be enough to be getting us certainly through the League of Wales teams in that competition. So, in that regard, certainly, I mean, with the big squad like Phil Parkinson has, he'd be able to put up to 4 more games into them. So that would be a positive, I think, from our point of view. Obviously, if we then qualified for Europe, we'll be looking at a lot more fixtures with this new model that the UEFA have adopted this year. So plus qualifying rounds. So that'll be interesting. But, there's obstacles to overcome before we get that far. Let's have a squiz at the next one. So, Janie Troll kicks off a series of questions about the transfer window. Of course, we've still got a couple of weeks left in that. If you were Parkinson, where would you be spending your money in the transfer window? Okie dokie. Well, surely we'll bring in a third goalkeeper. Maybe second goalkeeper, if you will, a direct replacement for Callum Burton. Mark Howard's done brilliantly. Okonkwo's back now, thank goodness. But, yeah, we need a third person in there, I would assume. Having McNicholas not fit, I don't see that. I don't see bringing him back as an option. So I assume we'll bring somebody in either on loan for the rest of the season, or maybe a player coming in and signing a sort of 6-month contract just to cover us while Burton and McNicholas recover. I don't think there's any problems with our goalkeeping department's incredibly deep, as we've seen. And then looking beyond that, I mean, okay, we will get to this in a bit, but certainly it'd be nice to score more goals. I'm not pressing the panic button over that. Actually, I'll come back to that in a moment, but certainly strikers could be somewhere that we look. There's a lot of strain we put on McLean and Barnett simply because they are bombing up and down the pitch non-stop, and they're both shown terrific energy. We've got good backup in those areas, mind to be fair. Centre mid, we've got good quality and good depth as well. Centre back, certainly we have. If Dan Scarr can't get a proper run in the team, then we're doing something pretty well. So yeah, interesting. Attack and goalkeeper, two areas I'd sort of look at. But then the other key thing to remember, of course, is are we looking to do something that will boost us up and give us more strength in the promotion running? Are we going to maybe bring forward signings that we might have waited for until we got promoted in order to give us that leap into the Championship in the second half of the season, in which case all bets are off, really. If Parkinson feels he can upgrade any position, he'll do it. I think that's the bottom line on this transfer window. Myself, there's more transfer questions coming though. Wrexham all the way says, of all the names being thrown around for a January signing, the one that seems the most likely to me is Dylan Levitt. What are our views? Hopefully we'll find out soon. It's like waiting for Christmas, absolutely. Now then, Levitt. Right, firstly, can I just say, there's an awful lot of gossip and waffle, and there are some, well, I mean, quite apart from the usual, just people claiming they know something when they don't. There's some, borderline malicious websites now spreading Wrexham stories, which are the worst nonsense. So it's difficult to pick out the wood from the trees, if you will. I will say, I don't know if Levitt is a real target or not. I genuinely don't. I would say that the club doesn't leak much now. It's quite effective in terms of keeping its cards pretty close to its chest. Levitt's a quality player, broke through into the Welsh team very young, and has got clearly a lot of ability. Whether we are seriously looking at him, though, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. We'll have to see. I like dredging out quotes from Stephen Fletcher when he played with him like 2.5 years ago or something. It meant talking about one game to try and give this legitimacy. So I don't know. He may be somewhere we're interested in. He might not be. Who knows? Certainly not me. Steve says, interesting to see where we go with roster additions. Just a thought, imagine another Rathbone-like player on the pitch at the same time. Just pure attacking pressure. Just thinking of other options than pure strikers if we can't get the right one. And, well, Steve, firstly, I mean, you're dead right. Yeah, if we can't get the right one. We need to get the right signings, and Parkinson be very plain on that. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the summer people are complaining, oh, we haven't brought in lots of players. No, we were never going to, and the Parkinson's only going to bring players in that he feels are going to improve a very strong team. So yeah, he's not going to just throw money around in the sake of it. He's not a gambler, and that's what's got us here. So let's back his judgment on that, eh? Another Rathbone, non-stop energetic midfielder, causing constant mayhem in the other side's half. Is his name James Jones? Jones is very similar. Neither of them know when to stop. But just looking in general as well, yeah, okay, so we put emphasis on our pressing. It's not just that Rathbone is non-stop, it's that Rathbone is very good at picking those moments when to put pressure on an opposing team. He does that so well. If we had two players like that, yeah, we would have an interesting pressing setup, wouldn't we? Let's be honest. And that is a good way, by forcing turnovers in the opposing half, to get the ball back and create chances. So, interesting. On the other hand, how about that classic midfield mix of passers and players of legs like Rathbone as well? Not saying Rathbone can't create or pass, but where does Elliot Lee, for example, fit into that? Is Andy Cannon similar in terms of the pressure he puts on the ball with Rathbone? Oh, I like football. It's way too complicated, isn't it? TR81 on Blue Sky says, glad to see Supermax get another goal. Our centre-back being a leading scorer is an indication of something very wrong up front. I wouldn't say very wrong. As I said earlier, I'd like to see us score more goals, obviously. But I mean, I think we've genuinely, goodness me, if we ever owed a player some patience, it's Paul Mullin. Or everything he's done for us, the way last season he bounced back from back surgery and clearly wasn't right, but kept going until the point where he was right. Goodness me, he's earned the right to have some patience shown with him. And I feel he'll come good. I hear people say, oh, he won't score goals in League One. Why not? It doesn't make any sense to me. And anyway, the issue has been that he's just not been able to take his chances. He's got into those positions. So why can Paul Mullin not take those chances if he could in League Two and the National League? That doesn't make sense. He's just gone through one of those runs where the ball just won't go quite where he wanted to put it, or the goalkeeper's anticipated well, or he's just been unlucky. It'll come because he's still coming back from that injury, still coming back from the complete lack of a pre-season. What he did last year was phenomenal, but he didn't really hit the straps until the last 10 games of the season. So I think we need to be patient with him. Palmer, I think he's playing well. It's just that there aren't goals coming in around him as much as we'd like. He'd like to score more goals, obviously. I'd like him to score more goals, but his main job is as a disruptor up front. And his physicality has causes issues for defenders and makes things happen around him. Interesting to hear Parkinson talking about how they considered starting Fletcher against Peterborough. I wonder if that is genuinely something which is on the agenda. That will add to our possibilities, wouldn't it? Farl, I think, is developing well. And so, yeah, I don't know if I want to say major problems. I wouldn't agree with that, if I'm honest. But, yeah, okay. Yeah, we're not scoring enough goals. I do accept that. We are right up there, though, aren't we? Which implies we haven't really got massive issues, I would argue. And KJ Gully talking about the striking situation just clued in that John Daddy is still in Wrexham kit. When is his contract up? I'd have thought he would have been unsigned as of today, as at the start of the month, to give him a chance to be signed. I guess that means we've extended his contract. Well, I'm not 100% sure, but I assume we've given him a contract a good chunk into January because you don't have to register players, so where would be the loss for us in doing that? I'm quite sure that if he had a serious club coming in to buy him and he liked the look of the deal, that we would release him from his contract to let him do that. He's come in and he's done a job for us. I don't think we'd want to hamper him at all, but he seems very happy at the moment at Wrexham. Admittedly, at the end of January, it'll be a case of will he get registered for the squad, with considering what we may or may not have brought in. But he's done a good job for us, and I think at the moment, yeah, there's no rush to move him on at the start of January, was there? He's a good pro. Would, I'm sure, have got a start at Port Vale if that game had gone ahead as well, which helps in terms of protecting our other strikers. So yeah, that's my reading of that. I assume we may have brought in somebody else by the end of January, but if not, it wouldn't break my heart if he was still with us and we offered him another 6-month contract. Oh, a couple left over from last week that I managed to miss. I loaded these tweets up, um, and somehow missed out on them. Nevertheless, was asking on the back of a few, should we say, theatrical performances by opposing players in the last couple of games. I wonder, do players have signals to let Parky know when an injury, in inverted commas, is a wolf cry against when they really need the physio? And then a nice screen cap from It's a League of Their Own, isn't it? The baseball movie. Nice to see Gina Davis making an appearance on the Ask Wrexham podcast. Alongside, it kind of looks like Robbie Williams, but it's not, is it? Nah. Not that I'm aware of. I think it's just, well, I would say up to a point you can really tell if someone's really in pain or not. But no, I don't think there'd be anything like that particularly. Maybe a spontaneous little thing, but it won't be planned out. I wouldn't have thought. I'd never heard of that, but, well, there's plenty I haven't heard about. Gareth says, I've said it before and we'll say it again. Our goal difference is going to be vital this season. We have to get a 90-minute playing goal scorer, preferably a forward. Sorry. Gareth, you're not wrong in arguing that goal difference can be extremely important. Although I've got to say, looking at the table which you posted with your comment, our goal difference is healthy. You know, the top two in that table, Birmingham and Wycombe, goal difference of 24. We've got a goal difference then of 19, Huddersfield of 17, and the teams below a goal difference of 6. So we're looking solid. I can't help, personally, I say, you can't really plan for goal difference. You just got to keep winning. Every time you win, your goal difference will improve, and that's the key thing. So I think goal difference should go hand in hand with results. So yeah, it'd be great if Mullin starts banging them in. But yeah, as long as we're getting the results, I would argue that's the key thing. Jason, Wrexham Phoenix, asks, how long has it been since Wrexham lost 2 matches back to back? I don't think it's happened under Parkinson. Well, it has. It happened in February 2024. If you remember, we lost 4 games in a row then. The run that started at Newport and Will Boyle got sent off, and we lost at Blackburn then in the Cup. Then went to Salford and got roughed up like Newport did, and then we played Bradford at home and just couldn't get going. Lost 4 games in a row, which is really out of character. Just to point out how out of character that is, I mean, there are so many remarkable statistics about Parkinson's 3.5 seasons in charge. But how about this? There's only been one other time we've lost 2 games in a row. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Sadly, it was a decisive one. The very end of his first season, we lost the last 3 matches, each of which were big, big games for us. We lost 3-0 at Dagenham in that last game. That, well, okay, defeat certainly meant we couldn't win a league, although Stockport took a decisive lead in the first half of their game, which meant our game didn't really mean anything, and can't help thinking it had an effect on how we fell apart at the end. But then we lost at Wembley in the FA Trophy final to Bromley, and then we lost in the playoff for promotion against Grimsby, the semi-finals. So, yeah, so he's only had 2 instances in 3.5 years where he's lost consecutive games. That's astounding. I mean, that's crazy. So, another impressive achievement by the gaffer. Janie Lightning. Oh, yes. Do the women use the same team bus as the men for away travel? I'm going to say yes and no from my limited personal experience, which is I've been to a couple of games with the women's team this season on the bus, and different buses both times. So same company. A little bit of disappointment with the first journey because we were just in a normal coach. It's a nice coach, don't get me wrong. Very nice coach. But it wasn't the fancy one that the men's go in. The second time it was a nice one with the table, so so you can stretch your legs a bit. So yeah, it depends on what's available, I guess, what's being used, what the company can offer. So it varies. Sometimes we get the fancy schmancy all bells and whistles one, and sometimes not. The Yarb, and can I just congratulate you on your name? Is it just me, or are Rathbone's corners not as powerful as Macca's and Barnett's? I think, do you mean O'Connor rather than Barnett? I don't remember Barnett taking many corners, if any. He has a different style, more orthodox style, doesn't he? He lifts them into the sort of near postish area. And certainly I remember at Burton, after Elliot Lee had gone off, after scoring directly from a corner, Rathbone was failing to sort of put enough on them. To be fair, I think the strong wind had an effect on that because he stayed on set pieces. But I think he's more of a float them into a good area one, whereas McLean, O'Connor and Lee have started really ripping them in with the pace towards the far top corner and just seeing if they can cause a bit of mayhem. It's smart to mix them up, I would argue. It's good to have more than one approach. It's good to have more than one setup, and obviously we do, as you'd expect any professional team to. But yeah, he puts them more into areas where players can attack them rather than trying to sort of ping them into a tricky spot where the goalkeeper's backpedaling through a crowd and players are running in from beyond the far post. I'd say that's a very dangerous set piece to play for the defenders. But I would also argue it's much more difficult to pull off, isn't it? You know, if you slightly underhit that, it's keeper's ball. If you slightly overhit that, it's a goal kick. So they're high risk, high reward approaches, those skimming far post ones. Whereas Rathbone putting them into the near post gives everyone a chance. If your centre back gets up big and heads it, then you probably set up a goal. There are interesting stats on in swingers versus away swingers, and I've got to admit I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's that an away swinging corner is much more likely to be met by an attacking player, but an in-swinging corner is much more likely to lead to a goal. So ponder that, if you will. Ron Wilk says, unrelated to the podcasts, I quite enjoy listening to your chat with the former players. You quite enjoy it, Ron? Ron? Quite? Just kidding. Is that something the club is doing, having the alumni return to the stadium? No, I've just been asking people to come along. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I just ask people will be willing to do an interview, and then I'll fit in with them. If it's on Zoom, it's on Zoom. If they're willing to do it face to face, I'll just say, well, you tell me where's best. And if they have no real preference, I've been taking them to the club simply because it's somewhere that they definitely know. So yeah, it's just something I've been doing for Final Whistle Weekly. That's the idea. Basically, I've used a few archive ones because I'm sure I've said this before. About 25 years ago, I thought there's no actual written history of the club. I need to write the history of Wrexham Football Club. Still doing the research. Took 10 years off because I couldn't fill it in. I'm going back to doing it again now. But I'm still doing the research because it's just so fascinating. All I'm doing is learning more and more. So I've got some nice archive interviews that I've managed to use and clean up. I got a good one this week as well with Mark Cartwright, who was a Wrexham goalkeeper in the late 90s. Interesting stories around him. And also is currently CEO of Huddersfield Town. So that's a good one to look forward to in this week's Final Whistle Weekly. But yeah, basically I've just been asking people to pop in or whatever so that I can chat to them. There was a second part of your question, which is about my dad. Was my dad involved with the team? I thought I heard one of them mention him. No, my dad was a fan. Started watching Wrexham during the Second World War. But no, wasn't actually involved with the team. Although, my name being Griffiths, and his, by strange coincidence, a famous, a player who made the most appearances ever for us, Welsh international, great player, and then the manager took us up the only time we've been up to the Championship, Arvon Griffiths. When I was in primary school, I did half-heartedly attempt to convince my classmates that Arvon Griffiths was my dad. Didn't stick at all. Fair play. But no, my dad's a fan, but not directly involved in the club. Although I did make a video of him for the 150th anniversary on the pitch, talking about sort of some memories, and it went on really well. And apparently Sam Ricketts, when he was manager of Wrexham, saw it and wanted to play it for the players. Oh, sorry, no, wanted my dad to come in to speak to the players before a match to sort of get them a feeling of what they're representing. Fans, it means so much to them. But Ricketts didn't stay around long enough for that to come to fruition, so there you go. Thank you for the question, Ron. Aaron, as someone new to watching this sport, I've been wondering why goalkeeper kits are so different from the rest of the squad. I don't mean just the colours, but even things like new kits having the collar and the keeper not. Thanks. Well, Aaron, good question, that, actually. I'd never really thought about that, the fact of actual different style of design as well. It is that goalkeeper kits, well, goalkeepers are different in many ways. Very different skill set, completely different role. And so I guess there is a sort of symbolic thing there, isn't there, of this person is apart from the team while being a part of it. So their kit must look very different in terms of style. I guess it's not a traditional thing, except for obviously the different colour. But yeah, I suppose that makes sense. I think as well, kit manufacturers quite like to have a bit of fun with goalie kits and like change, kits. Think about Wrexham. Our first shirt's got to be red, hasn't it? Really, if we suddenly turn out in blue and white stripes, people are going to get upset. So you've not got that much wriggle room with the first kit, and so I think that the kit manufacturers enjoy themselves coming up with exotic second kit, third kit, goalie kits. Goalkeepers, okay, the cliche is the goalkeepers are a bit mad. Goalkeepers are different. Goalkeepers are extroverts. Like all stereotypes, of course, there are some cases in which that's true and plenty of cases where they're not. But I think it's an image that gets taken fairly seriously. So you get these crazy goalie kits sometimes, and you get these extravagant characters sometimes as a goalkeeper as well, which fits in with it. I was a goalkeeper, but and maybe to give you a little illustration of how rules have changed a little bit about kit. I only ever got booked once, and it was for, in the words of the rule book, being improperly attired. I had the wrong clothes on. Basically, the rules say you've got to be a contrast between the goalie's kit and the outfield players on both sides shirts, so that wasn't an issue. What it was that in those days, you weren't allowed to roll your sleeves up, believe it or not. The logic being that if the ball came into a crowd and the goalkeeper came and punched it, that if they were wearing short sleeves, the referee might mistakenly think it was an outfield player punching it and give a handball. A rule which was a bit old-fashioned by even that point, because goalkeepers were wearing gloves by then, so you would hope the ref could tell the difference. But yeah, it was boiling hot. I had this big, nasty sort of, what polystyrene, what's the word I'm looking for? A horrible, warm goalie shirt on, this bright yellow. And it just felt like it was absorbing all this heat. And I rolled my sleeves up. And the ref just ran up and booked me. I was like, what? And he says, yeah, you rolled your sleeves up, you can't do that. So why didn't he just tell me to roll my sleeves back down? Anyway, so that's the only yellow card I ever got. Despite the fact that actually, technically, I should have been booked twice in every game I ever played. Because you're not allowed to mark the pitch as a goalkeeper, but I always did. When the ref wasn't looking, I'd scrape my studs in front of both posts and bang down the middle on the 6-yard line, just so I would have my bearings when the ball's moving around. I knew where my posts were without having to look over my shoulder. That's a yellow card, automatic yellow card offence. So, Griffiths 1, referees 0. That's how I like to look at it anyway. Although that guy who booked me, maybe it's 1-1 now. I don't know. Frustratingly for me, just not long after I did that, there suddenly became a fashion for extroverted goalkeepers. Mexican goalkeeper, what was his name? Chavez, was it? To wear short sleeve shirts. Fabian Barthez as well. So, I was just ahead of the rules. Shocking. I'm still not happy. Ginny Lightning. Now, I've got a long answer for this postponement question. Yeah, it's not been fun lately, has it? All these games getting called off. What's the record for the most postponed Wrexham matches in a row? This winter weather's given the UK quite a knock, absolutely. And I will come to Todd Cross's follow-up question afterwards of what's the most postponements in a row any UK team has had. Right. Now then, let me take you to the outstanding Wrexham AFC Archive website, because that will give us answers. The first ever season, coincidentally, that I watched football, 78-79. I was in primary school. Come on, kids. Cut me some slack. It was a really bad, heavy winter. Way, way worse than 2024-25. So, if you're watching on the video, I've got up on the screen our fixtures from December and January. First game of December, we get a postponement, Oldham away. We keep playing for a bit. Sheffield United at home called off, Sunderland away the day before New Year's Eve, and it really starts to snowball, pardon the pun. So we played on Boxing Day at Preston, and then the games just get called off. No games in January at all. In the midst of that, we draw Stockport County in the FA Cup third round. And this is why I remember this so clearly. My dad and I just travelling to the match. Because, of course, this is pre-internet. And so the only option we had, really, apart from phoning the club up, but there are plenty of people doing that, is to get in the car and drive to the ground. And so we drive, and we'd be looking for the telltale sign of the lights in the sky. You know, if the massive floodlights are on, the game must be on. And as we're getting closer and closer, we're thinking, this isn't looking good. That game, as you can see if you're looking on that graphic, is called off 9 times in a row. They keep trying to rearrange a couple of days later. 9 games in a row. Like I said, no games played in January 1979. We finally get it played on the 1st of February, and we win 6-2. So it was worth the wait. Our next 2 games, though, are called off. As is our replay against Tottenham in the next round of the Cup. We draw 3-3 at White Hart Lane. Oh, man. And then we go close to beating them eventually in the replay. Chris Jones scores a hat-trick for them, though. We lose 3-2 after extra time. But even by March, games are still getting called off. And there's also, as late as the 28th of March, a notorious game up at Newcastle where the game is abandoned because it's so cold. And, you know, they've spoken to players who played in that game saying it was frightening. They'd never experienced anything like it. It was really, really cold. Also, just a sign as well. Admittedly, Newcastle weren't doing well. They were bottom half of the second division that season. But the attendance, less than 8,000, I think also tells you something about the cold weather. And Geordies, people from Newcastle, of course, are famously portrayed in Britain as wandering around in subarctic conditions in T-shirts going, "What's all the fuss about, like?" That was a bad accent. I apologise to any Geordies listening or watching. It had a huge effect on our season. This is our first ever season in the second division. And I've got up on the screen the league table as it stood before our first postponement. 2 points for a win in those days, 1 for a draw. So leaping up and down the table, not as easy as it is now. But having said that, we were 9th after 17 games. And we were only 4 points at 2 wins off the promotion places. Just the top 3 went up. There were no playoffs in those days. And we had a game in hand on the top 7. So we were in a great position. We'd started so well. And just for reference, we're 8 points off the relegation zone. However, when we start playing again, we've dropped down to 17th. And you know, we've got games in hand, more games in hand now. But all of a sudden, 4 points off relegation, we are looking at survival rather than going forwards. 15 points off promotion. That's the spell where, you know, we're playing some games, but not many. the season is extended, and in April and May we play 9 matches in both months. So yeah, fixture congestion, just a bit. Definitely it's Saturday, Tuesday, and it has to be a couple of times 3 games in a week. And so by the end of the season, well, we managed to crawl up a little bit to 15th. We're still, only 4 points off relegation. And we are, hang on a second, 18 points off promotion. So, the disruption caused by those postponements hurt us, no question. Honourable mention, though, because that was remarkable, but 1962-63 is a famously bad winter in Britain. And it hits us again very, very hard indeed. We play a game on the 1st of December and then don't have another home game apart from one remarkable incident I'll tell you about in a moment until the 18th of February. So the snow is famously bad. We don't play a league game from the 1st of December till the 16th of February. And yet, standing weirdly in the middle of all this, our one competitive game in January, we draw Liverpool in the 3rd round of the Cup. And with the weather so bad, the club's desperate to get the game on because we're not getting any money into the turnstiles. And in those days, before sponsorship and all these different deals you can now cut and TV deals, body through the turnstiles are what keep your club in business. And we're desperate to play, especially because we know it's going to be a huge crowd. So the game gets called off on its original date, but we deploy basically the fans as a huge army of volunteers to clear the pitch, to clear the stands of snow. The cop would have been uncovered then, so there's loads of snow accumulated on it. There's some good photos if you search on YouTube of people clearing the snow, and also of the game itself, of loads of snow all banked up on the side of the pitch. And we managed to play that game. We lose 3-0, but 30,000 people through the turnstiles gives us the money to keep going through this terrible cold snap. It was so bad, across the whole country, 400 Football League games are called off. And the season has to be extended again by a month in order to get all those games played. Crazy, isn't it? Going back to the other question, most postponed match. Well, let's go to Scotland, shall we? For the UK records, there was a game in that 78-79 winter in the Scottish Cup that had to be postponed 29 times. But that's not the British records. The record is in that 62-63 winter, which I've just been talking about. There was a game in Scotland that was called off 33 times. Now that would be annoying, wouldn't it? But just look at those empty Januaries, goodness me. And we're unhappy because we had about a week and a half off, eh? Right, the YDAV is back with the simple question, is it pronounced Revan or Riven? These commentators never seem to agree. Well, speaking as one of these commentators, YDAV, old man or woman or whatever you are, Revan is what I've been reliably told he has said is the pronunciation of his name. I called him Revan for a good chunk of the season, but now I have been put right. Likewise, and again I've heard him say this on Welcome to Wrexham, McLean, James McLean, not McLean. I called him McLean all last season. I'm proud of myself. It's interesting sometimes. You look to find out a player's pronunciation, and you feel you need to go with the player themselves, how they say their name. But sometimes it's a bit weird, isn't it? If you watched the cup tie with Tottenham, beg your pardon, Liverpool against Accrington Stanley, on the wing, Accrington Stanley, the veteran player who played for us in 2008. Was one of a number of players drafted in by Brian Little, who then was discarded pretty quickly, who was a good player. He's gone on to a very good career, a higher level than Wrexham most of the time. Sean, that's non-controversial. Last name spelled Whalley. Pretty standard Wally, I would say. but he's got a very thick Scouse accent. So he calls himself Wally. Wally. And so I used to call him Wally. I noticed they did in the TV on last Saturday against Liverpool as well. Then there's people like, well, we had a midfield player 15-16. Adriano Moke was what his name looked like. He's English, but obviously of, I think it was Portuguese extraction. And he said he's Adriano Moke. There was no accent on his E as far as anybody could see. But yeah, you go with what they tell you, don't they? Of course, the other one that doesn't seem to cause as much trouble as it used to is Max Cleworth. And it is Cleworth, not Cleworth or Clayworth. I know this because I used to work with somebody who knows his family, and I have spoken to. I've asked his dad as well online, and his dad said, "Yeah, it is Cleworth," although they're not too bothered by that, which is remarkable to me. I sort of had what my name said correctly. Historic examples, though. Gareth Davis was our captain and outstanding player, played for Wales as well when we were a great team in the 60s and 70s and early 80s. And it was only after he retired that he actually pointed out his name had been spelled wrongly all the way through his career. His name had been spelt Davis, Davis, but actually it was Davis with an E. He just never bothered to tell anybody. And I understand the same's true of our friend up in the press box who joins us sometimes with commentary, Wayne Phillips, who has an extra N in Wayne, but didn't bother mentioning it until after he finished playing. So there you have it. The mysteries of names, eh? At least they were pronounced the same both ways. Oh, hang on. Before I say that, there's a couple more examples. Hold on a second. I mean, as I was a teacher, I'd always been fascinated by language, but when we had Polish pupils coming in, I always enjoyed trying to chat to them about pronunciation because I knew that British pronunciation of Polish names is terrible. So when we brought in a winger who was of Polish extraction, he was actually born in Faroe Islands because his dad was a Polish footballer who was playing in the Faroe Islands at the time, I had to do my consultation on how to say his name. So it was Adrian Cieslewicz. It's fair enough. Everyone at the club called him Sis because they'd decided he was Sizovic. I noticed that a lot of the BBC chaps would always call him Sizovic or Sizzlevich or something like that. And again, he wasn't that fussed. It made me think as well, though. What about, because we've got a history of players with Polish backgrounds at Wrexham, partly because during the Second World War there was a hospital in Penley for Polish servicemen. Of course, the Nazis invaded Poland, and therefore, as such, the Polish army didn't exist because they'd been occupied. But a lot of Polish servicemen and women got out of the country and volunteered in the British armed forces. So, for example, a lot of famously brave Polish pilots in the Second World War. And so there was actually a lot of people from Poland came in and around Wrexham, I guess because this is an army town, isn't it? It's got barracks on the edge of town. The Royal Welsh League is based in Wrexham. So there's always been a Polish community. I remember kids with Polish names being in my year in school. And there have been Polish, well, not Polish players, but players with Polish family, clearly, and ancestry playing for Wrexham. And it sort of got me thinking a bit, this anglicisation of names. I assumed we must have said their names completely wrongly. And I had the chance to check this theory out because one of those players was a guest at the racecourse a couple of weeks ago. And I've been lucky enough to be asked to do little 10-minute interviews with the guests down in the Bamford suite. And we all called him Wayne Cegielski. Cegielski. Cegielski is what we all called him. And of course, as time has gone on, I've thought, that can't be right. His name surely is something along the lines of Cegielski, So I asked him, Sigelski. So, like I said, it's ancestry, isn't it? His name's been anglicised, and I assume, and he's quite happy with that. It makes me think about the great Wrexham goalkeeper of the 70s and 80s, Eddie Niedzwiecki, still working in football. I guess he's more Niedzwiecki or something like that, but nobody knows him as that. Or in the 60s, Ray Mielczarek. I don't know how people named him actually, because I wasn't born. I have to do some research on him, Mielczarek. That's what it looks like to me, anyway. Let's move on. I'm disappearing down a rabbit hole. I thought that was going to be a one-word answer. Hey, that is it. I've answered all the questions. Good Lord. There you go. Right, well, hopefully we'll have football soon. Shrewsbury, that'd be a nice kicking off point, wouldn't it, really? But it's been a pleasure as always. Please keep those Ask Wrexham questions coming in. I do try to spot as many of them as possible. I know I missed some. So, persist if it's important to you. But, ta-ta for now. See you next week for another Ask Wrexham podcast. I am Mark Griffiths, or Mark Griffiths, from Wrexham AFC.